Hey everyone, I'm Armor Gaming, welcome back to my channel and welcome to Monster Analysis. Up for analysis today is Little Red Furry Cap. This cute little girl was once bitten by a wolf and she's been acting a bit weird ever since. Whenever she has a tantrum, she grows thick brown hair all over her body and starts howling. Her mom just can't get her under control anymore. So here we have Little Red as a child, as a teen, as an adult. Overall, I really like the design, it's pretty good. At first I was under the impression that her final form was going to be a wolf form, like a complete transformed wolf form, but I guess she's still a girl with just a tail and ears, but whatever, this isn't about the design, this is about analysis. So let's jump into that. But before I jump into stats, I have to mention that there are currently 32 dark legendary monsters, so I'm going to be comparing Little Red to those monsters which you can see before you. Anyways, Little Red has a power of 3,476. Now when talking about dark legendary monsters, this actually puts her in 10th place, tied with Barb. And although 10th place may seem a little low, 3,476, that is still an extremely high power, so she's good there. Her life is 26,239, and this actually puts her tied for 20th place along with 3 other dark monsters. And lastly, she has a speed of 3,421, and this puts her tied for 16th place along with 4 other monsters, 4 other dark legendary monsters like Master Skill, Dr. Hazard, MMO Monster, and Noxel Condemned. So again, not necessarily the best stat, but for Little Red she is an attacker, so speed, that doesn't matter too much. At least it's not really low like under 3,000, because then we would have a problem. Anyways, as for her trait, she's immune to nightmares. Now yes, lots of dark monsters tend to give the nightmare effect, but I really don't consider this a good trait to have, especially when dark monsters, they can possess you, some can stun you, and then there's Krampus who can freeze you. So there's a lot better traits you can have, something like Harden would have been nicer, but it is what it is, immune to nightmares, not necessarily the best trait to have. Anyways, let's move on to her skills. We have Bigger Eyes and Wolf Tails, nothing interesting there. Her ultimate attack is Eat You Easier. Deals very heavy special damage to all enemies, may give nightmares to all targets, may make all targets bleed. This is the special based AoE that deals 65 damage to all of the enemy monsters, and on top of dealing that much damage, it gives nightmares and bleeding. Now nightmares, there are some dark monsters that are immune to nightmares. Bleeding, still currently in the game, no one except Timerion and Totem are immune to bleeding, so that's really good. Nightmares for the following 3 turns will remove 5% of the enemy's health for a grand total of 15%, and on that initial turn the enemy has nightmares, they're going to lose 10% of their stamina, and then for bleeding, for the next 4 turns the enemy will lose 10% of their life for a grand total of 40%, and during that duration their power is reduced by 20%, or I think it's actually 19 in the game. So considering Little Red as an attacker, Eat You Easier is like the perfect ultimate for her. It's special base, so even against dark monsters you'll have no problem taking them out, 65 damage is high, and just in case if the enemy monsters were to live after you attack them with Eat You Easier, they're gonna get nightmares and bleeding, so they're gonna lose 15% of their life. So as far as ultimates go, this is a really good one. Really quickly, I'm gonna go through skills group 1. We have Bigger Ears, Red Disguise, Red Cap's Nightmare. There's nothing interesting here, so on to skills group 2. We start things off with Bigger Mouth. Drains 25% of the attacker's maximum life, requires cooldown. Now I'm pretty sure that's supposed to say drains 25% of target's maximum life, not attackers, because Little Red is the attacker. It'd be dumb to have a skill that kills her and does nothing else. Anyways, this skill will target one enemy, it costs 22 stamina, it has a 1 turn cooldown, and it drains 1/4 of their life. Now my main problem with this skill is that Little Red is an attacker, which means you're gonna give her strength runes. You're gonna give her 2 strength runes, or maybe 1 level 10 strength rune, whatever you have, and basically if you're running Bigger Mouth, you're not gonna benefit from the strength runes. You can have 3 level 10 strength runes on her, and if you use Bigger Mouth, it's still gonna do the same damage. It's just gonna take away 25% of the enemy's max health. So for that reason, I'm not the biggest fan of Bigger Mouth, and most of the time when this skill would come in handy is against a really tanky monster, and tanky monsters tend to be earth monsters. But the thing is, Little Red is a dark monster, and dark monsters have an elemental advantage over earth monsters. It would just be better to run a dark based attack, give this monster strength runes, and attack with that skill. But still, with that being said, Bigger Mouth does have one main advantage, and I would say it's an adventure map. In adventure map, Little Red Furry Cap, she can help you out immensely taking out that enemy boss, especially because Bigger Mouth has a 1 turn cooldown. That is really low, and especially if you have an MMO monster, maybe 2 MMO monsters, taking out bosses using MMO and Little Red is going to be super easy. But even if you don't have MMO monster, beating enemy bosses with Little Red is going to be pretty easy too. All you have to do is immobilize the enemy boss, and then just use Bigger Mouth, take away that 1/4 of their life, and then proceed to do some other stuff with your monsters. When it's Little Red's turn again, use Bigger Mouth, and yeah, having that 1 turn cooldown just really comes in handy. So I actually am going to go ahead and recommend this skill. Now I probably should have said this at the beginning. For Little Red, it doesn't really matter what skills you choose. There's only one must-have skill, and the other skills, it really doesn't matter if you pick skills group 1 or keep the default skills, because Little Red has mainly just one main skill that you must have. So I'll get to that a little later. Next off is Wolf Crew. Deals low special damage to all enemies, may make all targets bleed, requires cooldown. This is a special based AoE that deals 30 damage to the enemy monsters, it costs 35 stamina, and it has a 3 turn cooldown. And this skill gives bleeding to the enemy monsters, which as I mentioned in the beginning, no monster is currently immune to bleeding, with the exception of course of Timerion and Totem. Now, even if this monster was to have 2 high level strength runes, unless this monster has like a double damage buff, it most likely won't be taking out all of the enemy monsters in one shot. The bleeding does help to eliminate the monsters, but most likely it just won't do it. But still, because it is special based and gives bleeding, I would recommend this skill also. Next up is Grandma's Nightmare. Deals low dark damage to all enemies, may give nightmares to all targets, requires cooldown. It's a dark based AoE that deals 30 damage to all of the enemy monsters, costs 35 stamina, has a 3-turn cooldown, and again it gives nightmares. So it's really similar to Wolf Crew, except this is dark based instead of special based. Now in my opinion this is a worse version of Wolf Crew, just because again Wolf Crew is special based and gives bleeding, whereas dark based, if you ever plan to use this monster in Team Wars, you're obviously going to be facing a dark monster, so it wouldn't really benefit you to run Grandma's Nightmares, when instead you can run Wolf Crew. That being said, however, because Little Red is an attacker, you're perfectly able to run 2 AoEs, and if you use those AoEs back to back, considering you have an attack with a high power and strength runes, that is most likely enough to wipe out all of the enemy monsters, so that is a viable option. But anyways, we move down to skills group 3, and this is the must-have skill, Bigger Hands. Deals massive special damage, 70 damage, 28 stamina, no cooldown, special base. Wow. Now even though I did recommend some skills from skills group 2, really all you need is Bigger Hands. You could run, like I said, all the default skills, skills group 1, as long as you just run Bigger Hands, that is really all you need. Given this monster's power and given strength runes, Bigger Hands is realistically all you need to wipe out just about every single monster, of course with the exception of really tanky earth monsters that have life runes. But any other monster, whether it be a dark, whether it be any other element, as long as they don't have a life rune, Bigger Hands is all you need. Little Red, given no buffs, given no strength runes, if she was to do Bigger Hands on a level 100 legendary monster, this is going to deal a little over 10k damage, so it is just a really powerful attack. And really when you look at her other skills, she doesn't really have anything too amazing. The only amazing thing I would say would have to be Bigger Hands. Anyways, let's move on over to Grandma Claws. Deals heavy special damage, may make target bleed, 50 damage, 28 stamina, no cooldown, and it gives bleeding. This skill isn't too bad, especially because it gives bleeding and it has no cooldown, so if you go up against a really tanky monster, the bleeding will really come in handy, whereas Bigger Hands doesn't give that additional bleeding. But then again, Bigger Hands is 20 points stronger than Grandma Claws. So yeah, there's that. One thing to remember is that with attackers, you really just want to get the most powerful skills, because your objective is just to eliminate the enemy monster. Potentially if you can knock him out in one hit, that is way better. Why wouldn't you just knock out the enemy monster in one hit if you're capable of doing so? Anyways, Little Red's last skill is called Hunter's Nightmare. Deals heavy dark damage, may give nightmares to target. This is a dark based attack that deals 50 damage to a single enemy target. It costs 28 stamina, has no cooldown, and similar to the AoEs in skills group 2, Hunter's Nightmare is very similar to Grandma Claws, except instead of being special based, it's dark based. Instead of giving bleeding, it gives nightmares. And whereas last time I recommended the special bleeding skill, I'm actually going to go ahead and recommend Hunter's Nightmare in this case, and that's because there is that possibility that you're going to face off against earth monsters, in which case it's going to benefit you to have a dark based attack, especially one that's 0 cooldown. If you face any earth monster with Little Red, you're gonna have such an easy time finishing them off. So with all that out of the way, let's talk about the recommended skill set. I know I joked a lot about this monster only needing Bigger Hands, and to an extent that is kind of true, because if you were ever in a Team Wars involving dark and some of their elements, and the other element could be the deny monster, as long as your deny monster immobilizes the enemy monsters, Little Red would be able to wipe out one enemy, whether it be the attacker, the deny monster, or if they're both deny monsters, wipe out one of the deny monsters with just one attack, and then the following turn it would do the same, and the game is as good as yours. That's how powerful this attack is. There really isn't a need to use Bigger Mouth, Wolf Crew, Grandma's Nightmares, Grandma Claws, Hunter's Nightmare. There just really isn't. And even if you don't really care about Team Wars and you want to use her in something like player versus player, it's honestly the same thing. If you were to use Little Red and 2 Demises and use Strength from Beyond on Little Red twice, Bigger Hands, that's 2 enemies down, it's 3 against 1. Or if you just partner up Little Red with a Deny monster, the Deny monster mobilizes the enemy, Little Red wipes out one monster in one hit, and then it's 3 against 2. Like, this skill is just so powerful. So pretty obvious, run Bigger Hands. The other 3 skills I would choose for her would be Bigger Mouth, Wolf Crew, and Hunter's Nightmare. And since Little Red is an attacker, you should go with the typical attacker rune setup, 2 strength runes and a speed rune, or 2 strength runes and a team speed rune. If you don't plan on using this monster for Team Wars and only for player versus player and you have Demise, you might as well just run 3 strength runes. There are really so many different rune combinations depending on what your use for Little Red will be. And with that being said, as far as Team Wars, just keep in mind that for dark monsters, there are so many good deny monsters, there are so many good dark attackers, that even if you do have Little Red, if you also have other dark monsters, you probably won't really need to use her much, and you will most likely never see this monster on defense. So anyways, that is going to conclude my analysis on Little Red Furry Cap. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Please let me know what you thought about it in the comments below, and also please be sure to let me know what do you think about this monster. Do you think she's good? Do you think she's not so good? How do you think she compares to the other dark legendary attackers? Please let me know all of your thoughts in the comments below. And with that being said, like always, I hope everyone has a great amazing day or a great amazing night. Remember to dream big and pursue your passions.